Hey, it's Sam with Mesa Properties, and in today's video, I want to talk to you about the cost of property management. One of the first questions that somebody will ask us when they're thinking about hiring us to manage their home or multiple homes is, how much do you charge? So, this isn't a video talking about our specific pricing here at Mesa Properties. If you want that information, there's a pricing page on our website that's very transparent with all of that information. But this video is really meant to try to reframe your thinking around cost, price, money when it comes to paying a property manager. When most people ask that question, what they want to know is, how much of the rent are you going to charge to do a job? And what I want to try to make you think differently about is the difference between cost and price. Price is what you pay. Cost is everything else plus price. Mistakes, cheap vendors, poor work, not doing things in a timely manner. I'm going to get into some of that information. So I want you to think about those two things, because what you pay is not necessarily what it's going to cost you, especially when it comes to hiring one of the cheaper property management companies. So I have some slides that I want to show you, and I want to talk specifically about three qualities that you should look for in a good property manager. Again, not necessarily Mesa, but any property manager. And the first is expertise. You want a property manager that has solid expertise when it comes to not just how to place good tenants, but what are all of the laws? What are all of the regulations? What are the things that I need to be aware of? What needs to go into a lease? They need to be experts specifically in renting out properties. This is not a real estate agent that does property management on the side. You want to hire somebody who is a professional, and what they focus on is property management. The second thing, and it goes along with expertise, is local presence. They need to be local. There's a lot of Silicon Valley backed, venture capital backed property management companies that are coming in and making all of these promises that they're going to manage your property for so much cheaper and they're going to do it so much better because of their technology. And we leverage technology all the time in our business, and it's a huge part of what allows us to operate efficiently. But technology does not solve the problem of needing to know the local market. So having somebody who has vendors in a local market, who can go to a property quickly when needed, when there's an emergency that comes up, who can do inspections, who actually has seen the tenants face to face, all of these things are very important. And so local presence is huge. And then the final and third thing is being proactive versus reactive. The less that you're paying somebody, the less that they are going to try to work. So if I can do as little as possible for you, then my low price, my low charge makes sense, because I'm not doing anything to earn that. When the charge is higher, but the work quality is really good because they're proactive, they're looking for issues, they're trying to find, where can we do better? Are we renewing leases proactively? Are we doing inspections on a consistent basis? That's proactive. They're earning that fee, as opposed to reactive. We're here in case something goes wrong, and we actually find out about it because somebody tells us, like the tenant reports it, as opposed to we're trying to stay ahead and on top of those things. So we did a case study, and we compared a budget property manager to an, quote, expensive property manager. Budget property manager charges a flat fee and it's really low, and they don't charge anything else. Sounds great. Expensive property manager charges a percentage of the rent. They have other fees like a inspection fee and a lease renewal fee and a placement fee. And okay, they've got other, what are all these fees? Why are they charging all this stuff? And here's what we found. The budget property management company wasn't doing any inspections. They weren't increasing the rent. Why would they? It takes effort to do the research and talk to the tenant and actually increase the rent every year. So they place a tenant and they just leave them there at that same amount for a long time. They're not updating their lease agreement, even as the laws change. And they're not handling maintenance well, because whenever a maintenance issue comes up, they just find somebody on Yelp. They find the first person available to go out, and what they charge is what you pay. They have no incentive to try to make that a better experience for you, to keep the cost down and the quality high. And the expensive property manager, so-called, they're inspecting and maintaining the property on a proactive basis. They're doing regular inspections. They're keeping the rent close to market by increasing it every single year. They're updating their lease annually. Like when the TPA came out, they put the right exemption clause so that a property that's not supposed to be rent controlled doesn't become rent controlled or subject to just cause. And here's just an example of a 10-year relationship with a cheap property manager. You can see on year one, everything's the same. $1,450 for rent. They both do the same amount. But then next year, the cheap property manager, and that's in the far left where the rent column, The cheap property manager does not increase the rent. And so the rent went up to $1,500. They didn't do it. And now there's a $50 a monthly deficit. And so they're losing $600 a year. And you can see as this goes on, and we get to the end where maybe there's a rent increase you can see at year 4, and that's it. And this is actually something that we studied. These are not made up numbers. These are real numbers of a property that we looked at that was with a cheap management company. And you can see just in not doing rent increases alone over 10 years, that property management company cost the owner almost $50,000 just by not collecting the rent that they should have been collecting by increasing it. Now, that doesn't take into account that also in this case, that property management company did not serve the required notice for the TPA to exempt it. So you know what happens? Now when I suddenly decide I'm way too far under market in this case, you can't kick that tenant out. That tenant is subject to rent control and just cause. You have no reason to kick them out. Now you're trying to sell the property with them there. So the actual value of the property has decreased because it has a lease without the correct exemptions that would make this a more desirable home. The cost if you take that into account, I could triple this number for you and make a very solid case as to why the cheap management company costs 3 times this amount for that owner. That doesn't take into account also maintenance that's done poorly. Not just cost of maintenance. We're not trying to find the cheapest vendor, but who's going to do the work and do a great job, take care of the property, and charge a reasonable amount at the same time. So as you can see, they also weren't doing safety inspections. They weren't increasing the rent. They weren't updating the lease. And they were overpaying for maintenance, which that chart didn't even capture. That's just another side of it. Whereas the supposedly expensive property manager was inspecting and maintaining the property, keeping the rent close to market, and they were updating the lease so that the owner was protected from new laws and changes that came out in order to get them the proper exemptions that they needed. And it was just a better experience overall. So the monthly amount that you paid, it mattered in year 1. It mattered less and less, and it became a negative factor the further this thing went. So don't just think about price, think about cost. What is this person going to cost you? Do they have the expertise? Do they have a local presence in the market? And are they proactive or are they reactive? Hopefully we've made it clear that in our opinion, one of the most expensive mistakes that you can make as a property owner is hire a cheap property manager. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.